It is the final week of the regular season. The playoff race is about to end, and we'll go to a single elimination bracket in a moment with only half of the teams remaining. But first, everyone gets one more chance to show what they can do, and for a lot of teams, this is kind of make or break. Let's go to the standings one more time. And as you can see here, it's been a close season throughout, which is great to see. You never know what's going to happen. But also, these standings can, at this late point, pretty cleanly be divided into quadrants here. So these first four teams, the Dallas Dragapults, Flatland Flat Sands, Big Time Sand Rush, and Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold, can be pretty sure already going into Week 8 that they've made the playoffs. Some of them definitely clinched a while ago, but I'm acknowledging it now. So you'll definitely be seeing more of those teams after this week. Then we have the next four, Drago's Strongest Warrior, Varsity Farmboys, our Alaskan Absols, and Lightning Lancers, sitting in playoff spots going into Week 8, but not quite having secured them yet. Multiple teams still able to pass them, so still needing to show up and get some big wins in Week 8. Next four teams, Azurbe Chatots, Arctic Articunos, Movo Mudkips, and Melodic Miraidon. Currently on the outside looking in, but all still with one game left within striking distance of a playoff spot. So there's a lot on the line for a lot of teams this week. And with the trade deadline having passed, there are no trades to cover. Only Week 8 sets to determine the final playoff field. Let's jump in and see what we've got. Okay, chat, a lot going on here. We're in the middle of Week 8. This is chronologically, I think, the fourth set played this week. So some of the standings that you saw have already been shaken up. Some teams are eliminated or pretty well qualified for playoffs already that you don't yet know about. And this feels like a win-in. It's not a sure thing that it is a win-in, I think. But certainly the Absols will make the playoffs if we win this, and probably not make the playoffs if we lose. And our opponent is the Arctic Articunos, coached by Reckless Trico of the YouTube channel Reckless Trico, where you can watch their side of this set. And they're also fighting for a playoff spot right now. It's potentially a win and in for them, although I think it's possible for them to win and not get in, I think. In any case, two teams still in playoff contention, but I can guarantee one thing: we will not both get in. And also, I meant to say Trico is a PDL veteran. I think my first ever opponent in my first ever season, and here we are fighting for a shot to stay alive in this one. So what better time to bring Snover off the bench? Yeah, I have a snow mode here. Well, it's just Baxcalibur and Snover. But I figured ice type attacks are pretty good into my opponent's team, although I see they brought both fire types here. Then I have Trick Room stuff. I actually thought about bringing Giraffe Rig as well as Snover. I had a mode in mind, but I wasn't bold enough. So we're back on Eviolite Dusclops. I've shown enough willingness to use other items that... and there wasn't anything in particular I was worried about this time. AV Incineroar, Baxcalibur is just here to do damage. Throat Spray Primarina. I chickened out a Focus Blast on the Reuniclus this time. Shouldn't keep Trico waiting too long, right? We see the Glimmet for the first time. Not all season. I think it's shown up before, but certainly in a while. My basic game plan was like Baxcalibur, Snover, Dusclops, Reuniclus. Default assumption. Can vary on that if I want. I mean, I do like Reuniclus into these poison types and no Psychic Resist. They could have Terra Dark something. I have Terra Fairy Reuniclus. Dusclops Reuniclus looks pretty good. I could just stick to plan A and do like... well, the Tauros could be an issue for it, though. I could lead Incineroar. Honestly, Incineroar is good into almost all of this. It is Terra Ghost also to cover for the Tauros, but I don't necessarily want to use my Terra on Incineroar. I think I'm going to stick to my original idea, and that's going to be Baxcalibur, Snover, Reuniclus, Dusclops. And yeah, Snover can click Helping Hand to help Baxcalibur claim KOs. Getting early KOs is also good because I have Curse on Dusclops to try to wear down their bulky Pokemon. I didn't really feel like I needed Will-O-Wisp this week. They don't have that many physical attackers, and the main one is a fire type. But Snover can also just click Blizzard, and both these Pokemon have Ice Shard to finish off low HP opponents. I do think I'm just going to go for a Glaive Rush into the Muck slot here. If it's Terra Fairy, well, whoops. And I'll click Blizzard with Snover. Okay, Muck takes the Glaive Rush, and I'm going to lose Baxcalibur, but Snover survives Poison Jab with the Focus Sash. It does get poisoned, but it'll still get a Blizzard off. Finishes off Muck, does good damage to Glimmet. But I'm already down to these two, so hope it's worth it. Easy Chandelure. That's not that surprising, I guess. Does Chandelure get Imprison? I don't know. Terra Fairy, Dusclops. That might be worth clicking here. On the other hand, I might want the Terra Fairy on Reuniclus. Definitely will protect Reuniclus this turn. And you know what? If I try to set Trick Room and they click Imprison, that does cost me momentum, but at least the Chandelure doesn't attack. And I have a ton of special bulk on Dusclops, so I'm just going to click Trick Room without the Terra. Hope for the best on that one. But, you know, funnily enough, Draft Rig might actually be better in this position if I ran a ton of special bulk on that. But Dusclops is the better Pokemon. I just had a silly Draft Rig mode in mind. Okay, they went for Shadow Ball into Reuniclus. They double targeted Reuniclus. So I do actually get Trick Room up scot-free. Well, I don't really want a Terra Fairy in the face of that Sludge Bomb, so... Can I just Psyshock and Nightshade into Chandelure? How confident am I that KOs? I could Terra Fairy, Psyshock, Glimmet, Nightshade, Chandelure. That feels a little bit safer. Ah, Chandelure actually protects, so yeah, that works out well for me. See, their last Pokemon here is the Tauros. Huh. Well, is what it is. Let's just Psyshock and Nightshade into Chandelure. It just protected last turn. Yeah, the two poison types kind of discouraged me from bringing Primarina. Incineroar isn't great into anything here except Chandelure, which is a lot of the reason I brought it, and Electrode, which we haven't seen in Game 1 at least, but it is an option in other games. But let's see how Game 1 ends before adjusting the game plan. I don't miss Hitmonchan right now in this position, which is the Pokemon that I probably would have brought if not Snover. But I don't know that Snover put in a ton of work. Chandelure's gone. Reuniclus takes that Wild Charge pretty well, so that should do it for Game 1. Just Psyshock and Nightshade Tauros here. They'll kill a turn of Trick Room, but I think that's fine. I could even Psyshock and Curse, but I don't think I need to. I might as well keep Curse hidden for now. Oh, Tauros actually survives that, but I mean, it still has to KO both of these Pokemon, and its attacks are doing recoil damage. We can just Psyshock and Nightshade again here, and Tauros will probably knock itself out. Yeah. Okay, so we take Game 1, but it's still not going to be easy the rest of the way. The Baxcalibur lead, I think needless to say, didn't really turn out the way I wanted. That said, I don't think I'm opposed to running it back and just not clicking Glaive Rush turn 1 this time, or even doing like Helping Hand Glaive Rush. I actually think I'm going to. And then I can think about a new game plan in Game 3 if it comes to that. Okay, Baxcalibur, Snover again. This time it's Electrode and Muck. Okay, so Electrode is at face value not dangerous to Baxcalibur. It could be like Fairy Terra Blast or something, but I'm actually going to protect Baxcalibur and click Blizzard, I think. The other play I was considering was oh, you know what I could do? I could Helping Hand Glaive Rush into Muck, actually. Maybe I want the damage on Electrode, though. Well, I do have double Ice Shard. If it doesn't get a KO this turn, maybe it has a way to do that. I actually am going to Helping Hand Glaive Rush into Muck, I think. Electrode will be faster than Baxcalibur, so If I protect or Ice Shard next turn, I turn off the Glaive Rush drawback. I would like to land a Blizzard into this Electrode, but I don't think it's the end of the world if it doesn't happen. By the way, I did legitimately bring Snover, well, partly just because I want to use the Pokemon that I have and not just rely on the same ones all the time. Ooh. Okay, but still get the Glaive Rush off and it one-shots with the Helping Hand. Anyway, there is that. I did also bring Snover partly for legitimate competitive reasons. I liked the idea of Baxcalibur having the opportunity to do a ton of damage and getting some cover from the Snow defense bonus, and I liked Ice-type attacks into their team, as I mentioned. I mean, look at this, 2 Ice weaknesses. I'm just going to protect and Blizzard. I could Ice Shard and Blizzard. Huh. Let's Ice Shard and Blizzard. Either way, a full para ruins me, but let's just hope that doesn't happen. Anyway, ooh, Terra Ghost Ursaluna. And a full para, okay. But, Snover has the Focus Sash. Actually, neither Pokemon is KO'd. Get the Blizzard off. Does good damage to Electrode. What was I saying? Yeah, but it did cross my mind also that Trico always brings snow, ice, Arctic, cold-themed team brands. Things like, names like the Snow Point Samurotts, and this season the Arctic Articunos. And so bringing my 2 ice types felt kind of fun. It's not why I did it, but it's a happy coincidence. By the way, before I figure out my next move, here's the... you can see the Snover set is not compromising at all on its offensive stats. I mean, it's Focus Sash Snover. I can invest in those. Which is why I'm thinking for sure about just clicking Ice Shard into this Electrode. I mean, both my Pokemon are paralyzed. I'd probably just Ice Shard both of these Pokemon. I think Ursaluna is taking KOs otherwise. I think it's a little bit risky because I could take a full para, but I think I want Baxcalibur to Ice Shard Ursaluna and Snover to Ice Shard Electrode, because I think Snover will probably be able to KO. And in that case, I want the greater damage from Baxcalibur into Ursaluna, so that's what I'm going to do here. Baxcalibur is fully paralyzed again, but we do get the KO on Electrode. Don't know if the crit mattered. Baxcalibur actually survives, so it will get another chance to redeem itself. I'll go Dusclops here. I can set Trick Room. Reuniclus. Okay, it's Assault Vest Ursaluna. I kind of thought it might be that or AV Gudra or something, which is part of why I'm running Psyshock on Reuniclus this time. In any case, I mean, Baxcalibur doesn't really do anything at this point except try to Ice Shard Ursaluna again, and I think I can probably go for Trick Room here. Here's hoping. Again, I have like max special bulk on Dusclops, so I don't think Ursaluna's going to one-shot it. No, even with the crit, that didn't do that much. But of course, here's where it gets tricky. Well, Reuniclus took the attacks from Tauros pretty well in Game 1. I think I'm probably safe to just double into Ursaluna. We also know, thanks to the Frisk Dusclops revealing the Assault Vest, that it won't have Protect. Is there any reason to Terrastalize Reuniclus here? Slash, is there any reason not to Terrastalize Reuniclus here? I think I'm just going to do it just in case they have some silly coverage I don't know about. I can't even think of what that would be, though. Psyshock and Nightshade into Ursaluna. KOs. And just have to beat Tauros again. Ooh. That's more like it for Trico. That crit did a lot to Reuniclus, but I don't see Tauros taking this Psyshock well at all, and there's no reason to reveal Curse here. In fact, Curse could even conceivably be a throw somehow, maybe. Better to keep Dusclops on the field, but I don't think Tauros takes the Psyshock anyway. They're looking for any out they can find right now. I guess it was just stalling out my Trick Room with Protect, but with all the turns I had left, that was very, very unlikely. GG's to Reckless Trico. You had a very fun season to follow. Go check out Reckless Trico's channel if you're watching this. Definitely some quality Draft League content over there. But you know, I came here with a mission, and it's accomplished. And the Alaskan Absols will finish the regular season 5-3, which I believe will guarantee a playoff spot. I'm gonna feel pretty silly if I got the math wrong somehow, but I'm pretty sure as I'm saying this, the Alaskan Absols have officially made the playoffs, and that means we'll be back next week for the quarterfinals. Just 5 more sets to cover, as 2 have not been completed. Let's address those first. The Miami Palafins have forfeited the week against the varsity Farmboys. That is, of course, scored as a 2-0 win for the Farmboys, which will secure them a playoff spot. And at time of recording, the Cecil Samurotts and Sandshrews have not played their set. There are no playoff implications on the line in that one, so there's not really a rush. I don't actually know at this point whether they will play, but if they do, you know, I'll watch it when the time comes. But yeah, that one doesn't affect the ultimate results of the season, so they can take their time or whatever they want to do. In any case, 5 sets still to go, a lot of playoff implications on the line, and we start with Lightning Lancers versus Marvelous Bridge Malamars. The Malamars, I get to say this one more time, have brought 3 of their 6 dark types, and only 1 psychic type. And with the Bisharp steel typing, only, well, I was going to say only 3 bug weaknesses, but actually the Meganium is weak to bug. They're not facing any bug types, though, as the Lancers have brought both of their Sand guys and both of their Pincer guys. So, some real themes to these teams, but yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know. The Lancers are fighting for their playoff life here. The Malamars are already out of contention. We see the Alchemy, which has been such a tricky threat in some of these weeks, and is, of course, strong into a lot of dark types, and especially since we don't see the Metagross on the other side. The Crabominable gets a chance to finally prove itself, but I don't know the strategies here. We're just going to jump in and see what they do, as it's Indeedee and Crawdaunt leading against Meowscarada and Meganium. Of course, there is the Zoroark on the Malamar side, and we have seen that lead early sometimes when it comes to a set, but I right now, looking at this, I'm not especially suspicious that either of these is Zoroark, but can't rule it out. We see Follow Me from the Indeedee, Flower Trick from what is definitely the real Meowscarada, landing a big hit on that Indeedee, doing half even through the Citrus Berry as the Meganium goes for Reflect. And Crawdaunt throws off an X-Scissor. Again, makes sense with all the bug weaknesses on the Malamars roster, but it doesn't KO Meowscarada after the Protean type change. Indeedee redirecting another Flower Trick. This one will KO, as Meganium sets Sunny Day, and what are they doing with that? They've got Flareon in the back, so that'll get boosted by Sun, of course. Flamethrower Zoroark can be as well if you want to target a Flamethrower into anything. I guess it's strong into Excadrill and Crabominable. But also, of course, the Sunny Day could turn off Sand if they had set that. They haven't set up Sand. But it's an interesting tech, 'cause Meganium could definitely take a hit from Excadrill, I would think. And probably from Hippowdon too, if it needs. So that's a good anti-weather strategy from the Malamars. But I think the point of setting it up here, where there is no Sand on the field, is just to get Flareon going. We do see Flareon come in behind the Reflect here. Crawdaunt protecting. Flareon goes for a Trailblaze, so looking to boost its speed as well. And yeah, the Flareon is really, well, the Trailblaze didn't go off there, but the Flareon is working hard to get this set up. Terra Ground Crawdaunt, still weak to the Trailblaze, but not quite KO'd, as Weather Ball from Meganium does decent damage to Alchemy. Alchemy setting up with Acid Armor, but taking a lot of damage. Crawdaunt landing the Ground Terra Blast into Flareon, and that setup that I was getting excited about is going to be shut down. Crawdaunt hitting extremely hard still through the Reflect. It is going to be KO'd by its own Life Orb, but considering how much the Malamars have invested into getting Flareon going, I don't think I dislike that if I'm on the Lancer's side. And whatever comes in, yeah, whatever the last Pokemon is probably going to have trouble with Alchemy, although Alchemy is actually being pressured by this Meganium still. But in any case, we'll see the last Pokemon for each side here. It's Slowbro and Crabominable. Okay. Alchemy protecting. Crabominable just almost gets obliterated by that Weather Ball, but not quite. But the Expanding Force will finish it off. Expanding Force in, by the way, Psychic Terrain that was set up by the opponent. So some really good counter-teaming this week from the Malamars. As Alchemy will survive that with the Protect, but does Alchemy beat these two Pokemon? I don't know. Well, okay, I do know because I know how this ends, but Hey, I haven't watched the set until now, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Alchemy is still getting chipped down. It's going for the Calm Mind setup now. We've seen the double setup Alchemy put in work in past weeks, but Meganium's still going for the Weather Ball even outside of Weather. That's like a 50 power normal type move. It's not doing very much damage as the Alchemy is boosting, so it does look at this point like the Alchemy might be able to pull it off, but the Scald does a lot still and gets the burn. So there goes the Leftovers recovery. And okay, some decent healing into the Slowbro, but Scald is still doing a lot. And the Weather Ball chip it's not very much, but it's actually not irrelevant. Because it kind of looks like Draining Kiss recovery plus... Okay. It kind of looked like Draining Kiss recovery and Scald damage was a wash for the Alchemy, but the Weather Ball from Meganium, if it landed a couple more times, might finally put it over the top. So I do think the position favored the Malamars there, but either way, it doesn't matter as Scald crits. This, of course, happens when you invest a lot of turns into a setup strategy. Sometimes you get crit. That is the risk of using that kind of strategy. And the double setup Alchemy does get crit there. I think it was being worn down anyway, but really strong game one from the Malamars. I didn't necessarily understand what their team was built to do at face value, but we saw some really interesting text there, like the Sunny Day, Meganium, and the Expanding Force Slowbro, to counteract or even take advantage of obvious setups that their opponent wants to go for. And the Flareon, unfortunately, didn't get the chance to put in work, but with Trailblaze and Sun, it could have done a lot of damage if things had gone a little differently. I kind of hope to see it put in work before the set is over, but first, we'll see how the Lancers adjust here in Game 2. As we see Indeedee and Excadrill leading this time against Slowbro and Meowscarada. Okay. Flower Trick just goes right into Excadrill and does 90%, and it's actually Zoroark, not Slowbro, as it does a lot of damage to Indeedee there. So we do get to see the Zoroark put in work one more time. The Dazzling Gleam does about half and finishes Meowscarada off, but both Lancer's Pokemon are low. We get Hippowdon coming in here. That will set up the Sand, and that'll allow Excadrill to go to outspeed Zoroark and KO with the X-Scissor. But Slowbro's Expanding Force, again, in the Psychic terrain that the Lancers themselves set up, does so much damage to Hippowdon and finishes Excadrill off. That Slowbro has just been great this set. We see the Terra Water again covering for the weakness into, well, a Dark Attack or this X-Scissor. X-Scissor doing a lot to Meganium, but Slowbro KOing Hippowdon back with Scald. And, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the Crawdaunt to put in work here. The Indeedee is probably not bringing much offense. We just see the Follow Me there, redirecting the Rock-type Weather Ball. Meganium will go down. Slowbro sets Trick Room. But Slowbro is the only Pokemon left on its side of the field, so it needs to get some KOs quickly here. Scald into Crawdaunt does a lot of damage, but doesn't KO. And Crawdaunt going for the normal Terra Blast. That is, of course, a special normal type attack, guaranteed before Terra. And I don't think the Lancers used their Terra yet, so I think... Well, hold on. We know it's Terra Ground Crawdaunt, so it couldn't Terrastalize because then it would have been KO'd by the Scald. So I wonder if Terra Blast was just a misclick, because I don't know... Like X-Scissor is always going to be more valuable there. I think there is a misclick, and I don't think they intended to Terrastalize. So I think they probably just meant to click something like X-Scissor, or, I don't know, knock off if they have it. In any case, Terra Blast not doing very much to the Slowbro. They will get another chance here as Indeedee redirects the Scald. Crawdaunt going for close combat. That might be what they intended last turn. It does a lot of damage to Slowbro, but not enough. After the Citrus Berry, Slowbro's at 48%, so another close combat would still not have KO'd it, except maybe it's a roll with a crit. I'm not sure about that interaction. Actually, maybe Slowbro goes down to Sand damage. If it... Accounting for Sand damage... I think if they land a second close combat into Slowbro and it crits, there's a chance for the Lancers to win this game. So whatever happened with the Terra Blast, that pretty much ended it for them. But the Marvelous Bridge Malamars, with some really good Draft League counter-teaming here, take the set 2-0 and knock the Lightning Lancers out of playoff contention. So really, you know, no longer in contention themselves, but the Malamars have been a lot of fun to watch this season, and they make sure to leave their mark on the league standings on the way out. Up next, Movo Mudkips versus Azure-Bay Chatots. The Chatots fighting for a playoff spot. Actually, both teams fighting for a playoff spot. I think the winner of this has at least a chance to get in, even if it's not very likely. And the Mudkips, once again, putting their hopes on the mascot. We saw Mudkip put in a lot of work last week. It was very exciting. We'll have to see what it can do this time. But a little bit of an unusual Mudkips lineup otherwise. Only one ground type. They still have the Talonflame Garchomp duo and presumably the Telepathy Gardevoir to also sit next to Earthquake. But we also see Leafeon here against the slower, more water-oriented roster of the Chatots. I think that's what the Leafeon is about. We also see the Ampharos probably covering for similar things. And then, yeah, I don't know what the Mudkip is going to do this week, but I'm looking forward to finding out after last week. On the Chatot side, we see Squawkabilly for the first time in a while. And then a really interesting lineup. I could see them going for some manual rain stuff with Ludicolo and Gyarados. Although, again, the Ampharos, Talonflame, Leafeon, Talonflame into Ludicolo make that a bit harder to pull off. But then Hatterene and Rotom Skarmory, it feels like an odd mix of Pokemon, but they've definitely come into this with a plan, so we'll just have to watch and find out. And as we see Ludicolo and Squawkabilly leading against Talonflame and Ampharos. Okay. Fake Out goes off right away. Talonflame gets a Tailwind. Not faking that out, maybe because they want to do something with Squawkabilly before the Ampharos can KO it, or they think the Talonflame might have a Covert Cloak. Makes sense. Squawkabilly setting Tailwind, so that's what they were covering for, probably. Talonflame just going right for a Flare Blitz into Ludicolo, so possibly no Brave Bird. And Ampharos will knock Squawkabilly down to its Focus Sash. Okay. Squawkabilly lands a Parting Shot into Talonflame, interestingly. Not really the main attacker there, but hey, it was doing a lot of damage to Ludicolo. Also, they probably thought that it would do more with a Brave Bird. What happened there? Oh, double Muddy Water miss. Wow. As well, we see on turn 3 the Mudkips will get the Sun up, but before we move on to that, they did just leave Ludicolo in against a possible Brave Bird, and the Flare Blitz, of course, did less than a Brave Bird would have. But Ludicolo could have been in some real danger there. And then the Parting Shot into Talonflame, of course, comes out later than what would have been a priority Brave Bird. In any case, Talonflame also being the fastest Pokemon on the field. In any case, we see the Sunny Day now, so that might be why the focus is on Flare Blitz, because of course Talonflame can boost its own damage with that. We see an Ice Fang into Ampharos do not too much, and the Static Paralysis, Ampharos putting in some work even passively there, as we see it was carrying a Choice Scarf. It'll Volt Switch again, this time into Gyarados, and just one-shot it. We see Garchomp come in. Mudkip's pivoting around, but Garchomp takes a lot from that Icy Wind. Talonflame gets a Tailwind back up. Dragon Claw does good damage to Rotom, but Garchomp now burned by the Will-O-Wisp and dodges the Icy Wind, which would have KO'd, but the burn is still a big deal, as Garchomp will still finish Rotom off with an assist from Talonflame. Both players just trading blows back and forth. Here's the second Icy Wind that finally does KO the Garchomp, and it's now Ampharos back in, Squawkabilly back in at 1 HP, Talonflame protects, Squawkabilly protects. How is the Ludicolo this healthy? It's just been kind of flying under the radar for several turns now, hasn't it? Muddy Water and it has leftovers. Muddy Water getting the accuracy drop into the Ampharos. We'll see if that matters. Talonflame finishes Squawkabilly off. And Ampharos does miss the Thunderbolt, which gives Ludicolo a chance to KO it with Muddy Water. What a wild game. We see Mudkip is the last Pokemon for the Mudkips. Ludicolo, somehow the only one left for the Chatots. It feels like they have more in the back, but they don't. Mudkip taking half from a spread Muddy Water, showing the limitations of its stats there, and it'll be KO'd by the knockoff from the Terra Stellar Ludicolo. Fake out Muddy Water, knockoff Icy Wind. Stellar Terra leftovers. Very interesting. But Yeah, I don't know what to say about that game, except that that was just some wild back and forth action. Both players throwing everything they had at each other, and in the end, the Muddy Water Ludicolo came through. But I feel like anything could happen in Game 2, and we better just get right to it. As we see Ludicolo leading again with Skarmory this time against Talonflame and Ampharos. Skarmory pressured by the Ampharos, by both Pokemon, immediately switching out. Talonflame gets faked out this time, but we do see the Covert Cloak, because it does still set Tailwind, and never mind what I said about priority, because the Talonflame is running Flame Body, not Gale Wings, and so the Ludicolo gets burned. Of course, the Ludicolo is mostly relying on special attacks, but this will take away its leftovers recovery, and we'll see what Ampharos does. It's a Volt Switch into what was Skarmory, now Rotom. Does like a quarter, that's not bad. Ampharos hitting pretty hard here. Terra Water Mudkip on turn 2. KO's Rotom with Liquidation. Mudkip on the board once again. Takes a third back. Oh, and an accuracy drop from Muddy Water. We see the Skarmory again. Immediately going to take a bunch from a Flare Blitz. And it's weak armor Skarmory. But Skarmory, physically bulky Pokemon, even after the defense drop, takes the Rock Slide from Mudkip. Gets another speed boost, and now it's going for Iron Defense, bring its defense stat back. Hard to believe that's going to matter when it's at 13%, but do you know how fast +4 speed Skarmory is? I don't know how fast it is. I wouldn't bet that it's faster than Talonflame and Tailwind, but I don't know. Knockoff not doing too much after the burn, does get rid of the Covert Cloak. Skarmory protects on the last turn of Tailwind, so that'll solve that problem for it, as Ludicolo doubles down on the speed control with an Icy Wind. Mudkip going for Avalanche into Ludicolo, but once again, the Muddy Water accuracy drop coming through, as that Avalanche, I don't know how much it would have done, but Avalanche works like Revenge, where it has negative priority, but does, I think, double damage if the user has taken an attack. So the Icy Wind would have boosted that Avalanche damage, and it could have been bad news for Ludicolo, but once again, the Muddy Water drop delivering for it. Tailwind over, Skarmory KOing the Mudkip with Body Press, and getting KO'd back with Talonflame. But Talonflame drops to its own Flare Blitz recoil, so they just traded Skarmory for both of the opponent's Pokemon. Seems like a pretty good deal on the Chatots side. We see Gardevoir in the back now, along with Ampharos. We see the Gyarados come in. The Scarf Ampharos, of course, is a threat to the Gyarados we saw as we saw last game, but Gyarados now showing the Ground Terra, so taking nothing from the Thunderbolt. Moonblast crit KOs Ludicolo. Let's be honest, Ludicolo kind of had it coming. Ludicolo has been cheesing this set for a while, but Gyarados with the +1 Terra Ground Earthquake. It doesn't care that Ludicolo's gone down. It is putting its statement on this set. The Chatots take it 2-0. The Chatots have officially made the playoffs and knocked the Mudkips out of contention. And it was an exciting set, and you love to see the actual Mudkip put in work once again. But Ludicolo, Gyarados, and friends have stepped up, said no, and secured their playoff spot. And that brings us next to Big Time Sand Rush versus Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold. Two teams that have pretty well made the playoffs already. Probably both clinched already at this point. So potentially giving us a preview of what might happen in the playoffs, feeling each other out before the higher stakes matchup that could potentially come. We see the Espathra Superior duo again. We see the Ice Cube Flamigo duo again. We see Tauros covering for the physical threats from the Maushold. Also potentially able to cover the Armarouge depending on its set. And actually Tauros is really strong into a lot of this team. And then I don't know what the Gothorita is going to do, but here it is. On the Maushold side, we see possible Size Spam stuff with Meowstic and Armarouge, possible Gravity stuff with Meowstic, Flapple. They also have the Diplin to get the one-time evasiveness drop, so they can get Hustle Flapple going that way. Though, of course, Gravity would still boost Grav Apple damage. We saw Scarf Maushold next to Diplin put in a lot of work with the Scarf Population Bomb last week, and something like that is definitely a possibility again as we see those two Pokemon again. And, of course, the Hisuian Decidueye just always being a threat. So, two very strong teams. They've made the playoffs for a reason. And it's we'll see here whether one of them can make a statement about what might happen once that bracket gets going. So we see Meowstic and Armarouge lead against Serperior and Gothorita. Serperior going straight for the Stellar Terra. Gothorita for the fake out into Armarouge, but it does activate weak armor as the Meowstic shows the weak armor weakness policy, the full weak armor weakness policy strat with the Sucker Punch into its own teammate. Armarouge, however, is flinched by the fake out and takes the Stellar Terra Blast, but it does survive. Serperior, a Pokemon I'm very familiar with at this point, not hitting all that hard without a boost. However, the +2 Heat Wave from Armarouge only does about 60% to Gothorita, and Gothorita KOs back with Dark Pulse. And already that lead strategy from the Maushold has been shut down. But here we see the actual Maushold. The Meowstic sets Gravity, and the Maushold throws off a Population Bomb, so it probably is something like last week, where it's an offensive Maushold without a wide lens. We see it KO the Serperior there. Gothorita going for the Expanding Force, the opponent's Psychic Terrain. Does a lot, does more than half to Maushold. And Meowstic trying to Sucker Punch the Gothorita there. Once again, Meowstic, having previously set up the Psychic Terrain, is of course not able to use that priority attack into a grounded target. I kind of wonder whether Spooky just forgot. To be honest, that's a mistake that I used to make all the time, and I still do once in a while. So can't blame him too much if that's what happened. We see the Ice Cube is on the field now. The first hit from Population Bomb will break the Ice Face. I'm assuming the rest connect, but this is my first time seeing this interaction. Ice Cube, not exactly a widely used Pokemon in Gen 9 VGC, but yeah, the other hits from the Population Bomb do go through. Ice Cube carrying the Citrus Berry, probably with a Belly Drum set. Doesn't matter, the Population Bomb still KOs. This is why Maushold is such a scary Pokemon to deal with. But Gothorita, having taken no damage from the failed Sucker Punch, does get to throw off another Expanding Force, which will KO the Maushold, and now the Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold are down to just Meowscarada and Dipplin against a greater offensive threat in Flamigo, Meowstic and Dipplin against a greater offensive threat in Flamigo. Granted, Flamigo does have the type of disadvantage against Meowstic, but even Gothorita might be able to close this one out offensively, as we've seen the Dark Pulse. Flamigo confirms that it does have Co-Star, but of course there are no boosts to copy. Meowstic failing a Sucker Punch again, so it must have tried to Sucker Punch Gothorita again. And honestly, I wonder whether Spooky has just forgotten that Psychic Terrain is up, because and this is one thing that annoys me a little bit about Showdown. Showdown gives you so much information, but because of that, because Showdown has so much information displayed on the screen all the time, it can kind of mess you up when it only shows you one field effect at a time, right? So only the Gravity is visible as a background effect right now. I honestly wonder whether Spooky has forgotten that the Psychic Terrain is up, given what looks like 2 consecutive attempts to Sucker Punch Gothorita in Psychic Terrain. I guess the alternative is that Meowstic just doesn't have another attack. We don't see its last move. I kind of... Especially when it's running Psychic Terrain, I kind of hope that it knows Psychic or Psyshock or something. I don't know if it gets Expanding Force. But whatever happened there, the Meowstic fails another Sucker Punch and gets KO'd. Gothorita now starting to go for Calm Mind, taking the Syrup Bomb pretty well. And Flamigo KO'd Meowstic. It'll chip Dipplin here. Gothorita taking the Pollen Puff after its Calm Mind boost. Expanding Force does good damage, and I think Flamigo will finish Dipplin off here, as sure enough it does. So yeah, the Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold brought 2 very strong offensive threats there in the Armarouge and the Maushold, but the Gothorita sat on the field for the entire game, understandably not prioritized compared to its more threatening at face value teammates. And it's fun to see the Serperior and Ice Cube just melt to a Population Bomb, but in the end, Spooky ran out of offense here and was left with 2 support Pokemon that weren't able to break the Gothorita, with the especially with the Flamigo throwing off attacks next to it. So we'll see what the adjustment is in Game 2 once again, as it's Meowstic and Decidueye this time against Espathra and Serperior. So possibly some Lumina crashes mixed in with the Terra Blast or Leaf Storm or something here. Decidueye will set Tailwind, and actually I guess we have the answer now. As Meowstic shows that its 4th move is Fake Out, so I do think that's a flaw in the way that Spooky has built this team, and something that I imagine will be corrected in playoffs, that the Meowstic sets Psychic Terrain, but then itself only has priority attacks. I think something got a little bit jumbled in the builder there. But in any case, that's why it wasn't clicking Psychic or anything in Game 1, because the only attacks that it has are priority, and so with Psychic Terrain and Gravity already up, there was nothing to do except the failed Sucker Punches. That said, Flamigo being a flying type, it actually can be Sucker Punched in Psychic Terrain, so there still then was a better play for the Meowstic to make. Sucker Punch into Flamigo instead of into Gothorita, but I think the Meowstic just needs to have a different set in the future. In any case, what happened here? Serperior switched out to Gothorita. We see the Sucker Punch into Espathra. Actually, does some okay damage. Lumina Crash chipping down the Decidueye pretty nicely. And Espathra, it's still getting chipped by the Sucker Punch, but after 2 speed boosts, it'll KO Decidueye here. Gothorita starting to set up Calm Mind. Meowstic, again, is chipping the Espathra, but it's still not much of an offensive threat in its own right. We see the Terra Dark Gothorita. We see the side Sucker Punch into Armarouge. Obviously, we knew that was coming when Armarouge hit the field. But Stored Power doing nothing to... Stored Power doing nothing to Gothorita after the Dark Terra, and Armarouge KO'd back by Dark Pulse. We see the Gravity set up for the Population Bomb, which will, I think, KO the Gothorita unless they're unlucky here. But Robbie getting a bit of speed control with the Pounce into Maushold, slowing it down. The Espathra, of course, going to be much faster now. Still not in Sucker Punch KO range, but also Serperior will safely get Leaf Storm off here. KO the Maushold after the Lumina Crash. And yeah, Spooky's offense has been pretty well shut down, once again, largely by the Gothorita, but the Espathra put in a lot of work here as well, set up Serperior for that second last KO, and Meowstic is just not enough of an offensive threat in the back. There's no Psychic attack that's saving Meowstic here. And so, definitely a statement game and a statement set for big-time Sand Rush heading into the playoffs, and we'll see what the biblically accurate Maushold bring to deal with matchups like this once the season switches over to single elimination. Next is Drago's Strongest Warrior versus the Dallas Dragapults. The Dragapults, 7-0 heading into this set with a chance at an undefeated regular season. And Drago's Strongest Warrior, by this point, half of the week had been played. My set had also been played by this point. It was the next one after the last one that I covered. And people were discussing the math in the Discord, and I think Drago's Strongest Warrior was more or less assured of a playoff spot already at this point. I think there might have been like 1 or 2 niche scenarios where they could miss, but not necessarily with their backs to the wall here, but definitely looking to secure their footing is what I'm saying. Just looking to make sure everything is locked up, guaranteed, so a lot of incentive to deny that undefeated season to the Dragapults. The Dallas Dragapults here with the Rain Core of Pelipper, Basculegion, and Overquill, with Riolu possibly offering coaching to the likes of Basculegion, Overquill, or Rillaboom, although we've seen the Riolu put in other kinds of work throughout the season. It also could be carrying Rain Dance to cover for Tyranitar Sand from Drago. And then the Raichu, I don't necessarily know what it's here for. That said, I've seen Ninja Meerkat's pace, and I know that there's a lot of heat on this Dallas Dragapults team this week. I don't remember the details as I'm talking right now, but I'm pretty sure every one of these Pokemon has something unusual going for it. So even though this looks like a pretty standard, typical mode for them at preview, I think we're going to be in for some surprises. Meanwhile, on the Drago's Strongest Warrior side, we have the duo of Comfey and Tyranitar that have put in a lot of work before this season. We also have Corviknight, a bulky Pokemon, of course, able to... Well, not able to wall that much of the Dragapults team, but into something like a Rillaboom mode, it might get a good chance to set up and then be kept healthy by Comfey. And of course, the Corviknight's Terra type is always an interesting question. But yeah, Tyranitar able to change the weather, able to play a bulky offense role. It is somewhat threatened by Basculegion, Overquill, and Rillaboom, and even Riolu, but that's another Pokemon that will probably be running some kind of interesting Terra type to cover for its weaknesses, and has the Comfey to help it stay healthy. Plus, it has the Gastrodon to redirect water attacks from Basculegion and Pelipper away from it, which could be big in this matchup. And Tyranitar Sand can get the Lycanroc going, of course. And we see the Grookey taking on its big brother, Rillaboom. So, a lot of different ways this could go, but we see Comfey and Grookey leading against Basculegion and Raichu. A little surprised to see the Grookey this earlier, but we'll see what it does. What it does is switch out to Gastrodon. Gastrodon gets faked out with a Raichu, and why did that work? Gastrodon came in, but Basculegion still used Flip Turn into Comfey. So, does Basculegion get Mold Breaker? It does. Okay. And in fact, that was announced at the beginning of the game, because of course Mold Breaker announces itself. I just didn't notice. So I actually didn't remember that Basculegion gets Mold Breaker. Of course, in VGC, people usually use Adaptability or Swift Swim. It's always kind of crazy when a Pokemon gets 3 good abilities. But yeah, it was announced at preview, so Drago hopefully noticed. But the Gastrodon will not be redirecting water attacks from the Basculegion, and that could make a big difference in this set, for sure, as Basculegion is a huge offensive threat to most of this team. Honestly, they might need the Grookey to help check it at this point. Comfey taking a lot of damage, but it does get the Trick Room up. And we'll see what the Gastrodon can do. Comfey going out to Tyranitar now, right in front of Rillaboom. And we see here, I guess Drago didn't notice either that the Mold Breaker announced its presence at the beginning of the battle, but they'll know going forward. We see Terra Water Gastrodon throwing off an Ice Beam into Rillaboom, does decent damage. Tyranitar takes that Thunderbolt pretty nicely. Gastrodon does not take that Wood Hammer so nicely with the crit, even with the Dragon Terra. But it does have the double recovery from Grassy Terrain and Leftovers to get it back over half. Rillaboom going out to Basculegion here. Basculegion takes an Ice Beam. Takes the Rock Slide pretty well. And the Raichu with the red card, forcing Tyranitar out. Of course, to a random teammate. It could have been Comfey. Instead, it's Grookey. I mean, Grookey against chipped Basculegion is not the worst positioned, although Grookey, already a Pokemon that doesn't hit very hard as a first stage starter, really not going to be doing much through Reflect, I think. But the red card is something else. I don't know what Ninja Meerkat's intention was. Hey, Ninja Meerkat, you leave comments on these videos sometimes. By all means, let me know what exactly you had in mind with the red card, Raichu. What the intent behind that choice was. I know you brought Heat this week, but you must have red card for a reason. In any case, it forces the Tyranitar out here. Grookey back in, as a whole bunch of terrain and weather interactions and stuff go through. Gastrodon Whirlpool trapping the Raichu. Terra Fairy Basculegion actually would have taken a lot from that Wood Hammer through Reflect before Terra. It is terrain boosted, I guess. But surviving after the Terra, Raichu knocks an Assault Vest off of Grookey. Interesting. Tyranitar comes back in. Basculegion gets out. Raichu KO'd by Tyranitar's Rock Slide. Rillaboom. How often do you see Grookey KO a Rillaboom? Rillaboom narrowly surviving the Rock Slide, but the Grookey's U-turn will finish it off. Grookey showing, just like Ash Ketchum showed us so many times growing up, that a Pokemon doesn't need to evolve to be strong and put in work. And we see the Comfey back in now. Ninja Meerkat down to Basculegion and Pelipper. However, that gives them Rain, and Trick Room is over. But Comfey, the fastest Pokemon on the field, because the Basculegion doesn't have Swift Swim, using After You to give Tyranitar the fast Rock Slide, which knocks Basculegion down to 1%, but with the Reflect does not KO, nor does it KO Pelipper. Pelipper KOing Tyranitar back with Weather Ball. Basculegion flinched. Okay, I missed that. Grookey goes for the fake out into Pelipper, but that gives Basculegion last respects. We see Speed Racer typing F in the chat, so maybe he misclicked there, or was trying to read a protect. Yeah, maybe he thought the Basculegion would protect. That makes a lot of sense, because the Grookey could so easily KO it. But instead, Pelipper flinches, but both of Ninja Meerkat's Pokemon survive. Basculegion KOs the Grookey, and the Comfey can't stand up to these two Pokemon. So a close game, definitely some different ways it could have gone, but just some wild sets from Ninja Meerkat, especially the Mold Breaker, Terra Fairy, Basculegion, coming through and breaking the less offensive mode from Drago's Strongest Warrior. Definitely some points there where it seemed like Drago could have it. My guess is that the fake out went into Pelipper because he thought that Basculegion would protect, and if I were in that position thinking it through like that, I might make the same play. But yeah, Ninja Meerkat with some bold team building decisions and some bold plays taking game 1, and we go now to game 2. Ninja Meerkat 1 game away from an undefeated regular season, leading Basculegion and Raichu against Tyranitar and Lycanroc. So, immediate weather for Drago, but then Ninja Meerkat changes it back with the Pelipper. We see Tyranitar protecting and Lycanroc going for Howl, so a setup mode here from Drago, but that of course means that the Tyranitar is not so free to pivot in and out, right? If you were thinking about switching Tyranitar out and bringing it in to get the sand back up, now that you've invested into setting Tyranitar up, you're probably going to have to take a different approach. And we see that here with the Terra Dragon Tyranitar. Makes sense, can hold up pretty well to all these Pokemon, although honestly I kind of wonder whether the Basculegion is Fairy Terra Blast at this point. Flip Turn still doing decent damage in the rain. Rock Slide hitting hard back, but the red card Raichu forcing the Tyranitar out. Wait, okay, Ninja Meerkat, I think I'm starting to see it. I did say at preview that your opponent had a lot of possible setup modes, and we see there the Howl setting up Tyranitar turn 1, but then it loses the boost because the Raichu forces it out. So the red card Raichu putting in some work here. Comfey forced in. We see Grookey switch in next to it. And Comfey just gets dropped by the Woodhammer in grassy terrain. Comfey and Grookey... Well, Grookey has shown some offensive prowess. Even here, that fake out did not too bad damage to the Raichu. Comfey not being an offensive threat here has potentially been a bit of an issue for its team. But we see Lycanroc in here now without the sand, and it just gets knocked down to its Focus Sash by Rillaboom. Rillaboom is taking a lot of recoil damage, though, and the Rock Slide will finish both Raichu and Rillaboom off, bringing us to a 3-on-2 against Pelipper and Basculegion. Tyranitar, of course, will get the sand when it comes back in. We see the Terra Fairy Basculegion once again. Only takes 19% from Grassy Glide and KO's Grookey back. Pelipper getting to set the Tailwind on Lycanroc's Protect. Ninja Meerkat pretty well getting all the reads right, so credit to him for that. Tyranitar's back, Sand is back, Lycanroc gets a Rock Slide, misses Basculegion, does about 2/3 to Pelipper. Last respects KO's Tyranitar after the Dragon Terra. So the Dragon Terra covered for so many possible weaknesses into this team, right? The water attacks from multiple Pokemon, the grass attacks from Rillaboom, but Basculegion didn't even need Fairy Terra Blast. I believe it is Choice Banded Basculegion. Like I said, I saw the paste last night, but last respects at 2 boosts, enough to KO the Tyranitar after Tyranitar has turned its Dark typing off. And Ninja Meerkat, yeah, finishing off the Lycanroc with the Rock Weather Ball. Sand going back up didn't matter in the end. Ninja Meerkat finishing the regular season undefeated, 8-0. The clear player to beat in the playoffs. Obviously, the 1 seed is the only undefeated player. And Drago's Strongest Warrior, I'll just tell you now, did make the playoffs. It was pretty much assured already heading into this set, but going to have to find some answers to deal with Ninja Meerkat after not finding them this time. And of course, with a couple of sets not played, there is only one left. And that is Flatland Flat Sands versus Melodic Miraidon. At this point, the playoff field is nearly set, but the Miraidon still have one more chance to make the playoffs. They can, I think, at least force a tie for 8th place, depending on how this set turns out. So still some stuff on the line here for at least one of these teams. And the Miraidon have brought an interesting lineup to not even necessarily a win and in, but like win and have a chance. We see the duo of Sneasler, Dragapult that VGC players are so familiar with right now. We see the Glimmora that's been strong for the Miraidon at times. Rabombi able to potentially set up a Tailwind or threaten Fairy type damage into some of the Fairy and Bug damage into some of these modes. But we also see the Bruxish and the Impidimp, which are Pokemon that I feel like we haven't seen in a while, that I feel like were not on my radar in this season for quite some time now. Impidimp, I don't really know what Impidimp does. It probably gets Prankster screens. It probably gets Prankster like Thunder Wave, so it could do some speed control stuff, which could be strong into some of the fast offense from the Flat Sands, the Pokemon like Typhlosion and Lucario. Bruxish. Well, the water typing is pretty good into some of the main offensive modes that we've seen from the Flat Sands this season. Again, centered on the likes of Typhlosion and Mudsdale. But Bruxish is a Pokemon you mostly bring to stop priority most of the time, and it would stop an extreme speed from Lucario and a Sucker Punch from Honchkrow. And then, the water typing I do think is good here, so haven't seen Bruxish in a while, but I do kind of see the vision, I think. And then on the other side, we have the duo of Whimsicott and Typhlosion, another classic Reg H duo. We know Whimsicott can use Beat Up into Mudsdale or Lucario to give them defense or attack boosts, respectively. And then Clefable and Honchkrow are just really solid pieces that could complement any of these modes. So lots of options for both players here, as we see Whimsicott and Honchkrow leading against Impidimp and Sneasler. And look at that shiny Impidimp. That's a funny guy. But, Sneasler protecting turn 1 on the Tailwind. Impidimp does go for the Thunder Wave, but it's into Honchkrow, so, of course, the Dark-type Prankster immunity will protect Honchkrow and keep it from being paralyzed. Honchkrow going for Sky Attack, we see. I assume there's a Power Herb coming to make it a one-turn attack. I do enjoy pausing here when the Honchkrow is like semi-transparent. That looks kind of interesting, but it goes into Sneasler, so they burn their Power Herb on an unsuccessful attack. Sneasler now locked into Protect, though, by the Encore, so solid multi-layered plan there from the Flat Sands. Either Sneasler takes that damage, or you do this to it. As Impidimp goes for... Oh, it's a Swagger Mirror Herb play. Impidimp Swagger into the Whimsicott. Of course, the attack boost won't benefit Whimsicott. The only thing it'll do is boost its Confusion self-damage if there is any. But then with the Mirror Herb, Whimsicott is able to... Sneasler is able to copy the stat boost, which would be great if not for Sneasler being locked into Protect. Of course, the only way to get out of that Encore lock is to either just stall it out. Just sit there on the field clicking Protect until it ends. Tricky for a Pokemon as frail as Sneasler. Or to switch out and give up the attack boost. So Sneasler is still not in a great position there. And we see that although Honchkrow did burn its one single-use, one-turn Sky Attack into a Protect, it's following that up with Acrobatics, which of course hits almost as hard when the whole user doesn't have an item. So Honchkrow really engineered to throw off strong flying type attacks here. It gets the one-time Sky Attack, and then it's not nerfed after that because it has the Acrobatics as well. It'll KO Impidimp here. And it's Moxie Honchkrow, so it gets an attack boost on top. Sneasler really badly positioned into this. But we see the Glimmora able to threaten the Honchkrow. Takes a lot, actually, from Acrobatics. It takes about half. Mudsdale gets in before the Toxic Debris, and, of course, is a reasonable defensive check to Glimmora. Whimsicott will come in here, probably not care about being poisoned. It doesn't exactly play a bulky game. We see the Terra Grass Sneasler, but it's still stuck using Protect, and now the Glimmora is locked into Meteor Beam, which, of course, with its Power Herb gone, takes 2 turns to execute. Sneasler gets out of the Encore here, but then it protects again, so they're counting on KOing the Whimsicott, and they do. So Sneasler will finally get a chance to make some moves here, as we see Bruxish come in. Some good offensive threats into Mudsdale, and Typhlosion being the last Pokemon on the Flat Sand side might have trouble standing up to Bruxish. We see this Terra Psychic Mudsdale, still takes a lot from +2 close combat, gets a stamina boost, doesn't quite KO Bruxish with the Lash Out, so Typhlosion will drop to this Wave Crash. Bruxish will go down with it. But the Sneasler showing Night Slash, finishing off the Terra Psychic Mudsdale. And so despite Sneasler being in such a tough spot early in the game, the mirror boost does come through for it in the end, as the Flat Sands focused on getting rid of its teammates to the point where Sneasler was able to get out of the Encore and start doing damage, and once it did a lot of damage. Plus the Glimmora put in work, plus the Bruxish put in work in the back, and the Typhlosion wasn't strong into either of those Pokemon. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Flat Sands leave Typhlosion on the bench for, honestly, the rest of this set. Maybe you could lead it, but it's weak into a lot of these Pokemon, so yeah, I don't know that we're going to see Typhlosion again in this one. And yeah, the Night Slash Sneasler. Night Slash, of course, having a boosted critical hit rate, so it could help Sneasler break through stamina boosts, maybe. I'm not saying they anticipated Terra Psychic Mudsdale, but maybe they had something like that in mind when they chose that specific Dark-type attack instead of something like Throat Chop. Side note, I played a Dark Terra Blast Sneasler on the ladder last night, and that's kind of weird, because Sneasler gets Dark-type attacks that don't rely on it to Terra. But anyway, Game 2. We see Whimsicott and Typhlosion. So Typhlosion is in the lead this time against Dragapult and Bruxish. We see that it's Choice Band Dragapult and Choice Scarf Bruxish. I wasn't really thinking about the speed interaction last game, but Typhlosion actually does have a higher base speed than Bruxish. I wasn't sure. Just barely, though. So, yeah, I didn't know it was Scarf for that last game. It could have just come down to the speed investment, but we do get that confirmation now that it's Scarf Bruxish. It'll always outspeed this Typhlosion, barring other speed control. Of course, the Whimsicott could set Tailwind here, and it does. We see Terra Water Bruxish turning off its weakness to the Shadow Ball. Does take the drop, but KOs Typhlosion with the flip turn. Typhlosion still, I think, not making the best case for itself in this matchup. And now we see the Clefable come in, and the Ribombee, so a few different Pokemon here compared to Game 1. Terra Steel Whimsicott does a lot to the Ribombee with Moonblast, but not so much after the Citrus Berry. Glimmora protects itself on Clefable's Psychic, but it'll take a Psychic here. Only does a little more than half. Sludge Bomb hits hard back, but with the Tailwind still up, well, Glimmora is forced to protect itself, and that leaves Bruxish vulnerable to be KO'd by the Whimsicott's Moonblast. We see Dragapult come in, Whimsicott free to set Tailwind back up. We see the Phantom Force, but Clefable once again free to throw off the Psychic into Glimmora, and with the Tailwind, Clefable just wins that 1v1 we see at this point. And so Dragapult stands alone as we see Honchkrow come in and just KO with a Sucker Punch. So some pretty simple Tailwind offense from the Flat Sands there. I've bashed the Typhlosion a little bit. It didn't really put in work, but the Dragapult was too awkwardly positioned when it didn't have speed control. The Bruxish went down pretty quickly to the Shadow Ball into Moonblast. It did turn off its so the Typhlosion did put in work there. The Bruxish turned off its Shadow Ball weakness, but it was still weakened enough for Whimsicott to finish it off. And then Psychic, Clefable, and Tailwind. It and Glimmora were two-hit KOing each other, but Clefable going first means it wins that. So we'll see how we're going to, by the way, you might have noticed our only Game 3 of the week, right? I think that's right. Yeah, our only Game 3 of the week. The Melodic Miraidon making their last stand. We'll see how they deal with this Tailwind offense, as it is Whimsicott leading again, this time with Honchkrow against Glimmora and Sneasler. Sneasler protecting. Tailwind, and there's the Sky Attack again, but once again it goes into a Protect. Of course, we know that Honchkrow has the boosted Acrobatics now, and Whimsicott just drops to a Sludge Bomb from Glimmora, but that might actually be what the Flat Sands wanted, because that gets a more offensively... well, actually, the Whimsicott was doing good damage with that Moonblast. The Mudsdale is more of a bulky tank, but it gets a more threatening Pokemon in the Mudsdale. Honchkrow protecting here, maybe anticipating a Meteor Beam. Instead, Glimmora protects. And Sneasler just drops to high horsepower. Of course, Sneasler, we know, doesn't have the Focus Sash because we saw the Mirror Herb in Game 1. Terra Water Bruxish, it'll Wave Crash, but it's into Terra Psychic Mudsdale, so Mudsdale survives. Bruxish drops to Acrobatics. We see the Moxie boost on Honchkrow. Might drop to a Meteor Beam here. It does. But the Mudsdale is still here, and high horsepower will KO the Glimmora. Just both teams just trading blows back and forth at this point. And we see Impidimp is the last Pokemon for the Miraidon. It'll confuse the Mudsdale. but... And it does get the Confusion self-damage, but Clefable able to use the Life Dew here to keep Mudsdale healthy. And the Miraidon forfeit. What have we seen from Clefable? We've seen Psychic and Life Dew. I don't think we know its other moves. It could have a Fairy attack. But I don't know. I feel like if it's me, I play this out. I swagger Clefable, and I hope that both Pokemon just do self-damage forever. But that is technically a win condition that exists. Maybe not forever. Maybe you need Impidimp to take a hit at some point. I think it is mathematically possible, probably, for the Miraidon to win this game. But the odds are stacked so hard against them here that I can understand the forfeit. And I'm not trying to be especially critical of it. I feel like there was a chance, but it was like... It would be the craziest game you ever saw in your life if it actually did work out. So I can understand the Miraidon forfeiting here. The game is indeed hard. Pancake Mix speaking the truth here. But yeah, the Terra Psychic Mudsdale making the difference in that one because it was able to survive the wave crash. And that made it the last Pokemon standing in that big damage back and forth KO trading turn 3. And from there, the Miraidon ran out of offense. And with that, the playoff field is officially set. So before we end the video, we are going to take one quick look at which teams will still be with us next week. And so we say goodbye to the regular season. And I wanted to just show the playoff field now instead of pointless suspense until next week. So these are the 8 teams that made the playoffs, and they are in seeding order here. Despite how close the season was throughout, there was no need for any additional tiebreakers for any of these teams. Everything lined up very nicely. The Lightning Lancers also went 4-4, but with a game differential of -1. Just don't quite make it into that top 8 spot, and everyone else finished the season with 3 wins or fewer. You can see that when the bracket starts, there will be some immediate Week 8 rematches in quarterfinals. Dallas Dragapults versus Drago Strongest Warrior, and Big Time Sandrush versus Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold. Both of those were pretty one-sided matchups in the regular season, and they're going right at it again, so it'll be interesting to see how those coaches adjust and try to solve a matchup that went badly for them the first time. Or keep, stay in the driver's seat for those who won in the regular season. Meanwhile, the Alaskan Absols, as the number 5 seed, will be taking on a brand new opponent in the varsity Farmboys. So tune in next week for the quarterfinals to see how that turned out.